Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 creative coach, and normally with the content that I put out, I talk about lessons to help creative artists, right, on their journeys. Well, in this video, as you can probably tell by the title, I'm going to talk about His Dark Materials, the show on HBO in conjunction with BBC, specifically episode 3 called The Spies. Now, just by that description alone, you can probably guess that I'm going to talk about it from a spoiler-filled way. So I'm going to assume that you've seen the episode and talk about it in such terms. And towards the latter half of my discussion, if you want to call it that, I'm going to also compare it to the book. So before I get there, I'm going to give another spoiler warning because I know some people haven't read the books. And by just talking about it, it's spoiler-filled to the people that haven't read the books, right? So I promise to give you that warning, and that's essentially kind of how I'm going to lay out this video. So, number one, I'm going to say I really enjoy where this is headed and how it's paced. Having read the books, I knew kind of the overall broad strokes of what was going to happen, where the Gyptians were kind of going to protect Lyra, but the way in which things happened in this episode were unexpected, and I appreciate the tension with which they built a lot of this stuff. A couple of moments, like for example, when they're trying to find Lyra, the Magisterium, right? They're searching the boats and so forth. Or when Tony and the other Gyptian boy go to Mrs Coulter's house. And that was a big moment of tension, and I appreciate what they did with that. As far as other stuff, like it's not necessarily fast-paced or it doesn't have as much dramatic tension, but I do appreciate Lyra getting to know the Gyptians and kind of have the discussions that she's having, whether it be with the father or Ma Costa in particular, like that strong kinship that she's forming with her. I truly, truly do appreciate, because, I mean, that's certainly a big revelation of that, where Ma Costa reveals that Mrs Coulter is Lyra's mother. And that's a huge reveal in the book, but also in this episode, right? And, you know, there is that trust because the Gyptians did take care of her. So I truly, truly do appreciate how that came to be and the kinship that it starts to form because of that. The other aspects, like when the Gyptians are having their debate, I truly appreciate how Lyra really stepped up in those moments and wasn't just this timid little girl. She really took charge and said her piece. And, you know, so overall, I just appreciate what they're doing with the show. And it's also interesting to notice the level of compassion, if you want to call it that, or love, perhaps, I'm not quite sure, at least not yet, that Mrs Coulter has for Lyra. Because I did appreciate, like, the spy flies, the fact that they're illegal, and the fact that Mrs Coulter chooses to engage them nonetheless, right? That certainly says something. So there's a lot going on in this episode, even though, you know, it kind of doesn't, location-wise, we don't get that much further to the north than I perhaps thought, but that's okay because it's just awesomely jam-packed with very, very good stuff. Now, the other subplot that's happening here is in what I'll call like our world, right? The snake guy from the Magisterium, he crosses over and he's really kind of putting things into play. You know, and he's like knowing he's setting up these various moments of intrigue. And this is where I'm going to kind of get into the books as well. So if you're not interested in that sort of discussion, tune out now. You know, him in particular, they're setting up the Will Parry storyline, and we learn John Parry. Like with the books, it was a reveal that Stanislav Grumman is John Parry, and he has a son named Will. And Will, just in particular, he doesn't show up till the second book. He opens the second book. And so I actually like them layering this in because there's these things happening. You know, the timeline of things there's always something going on. So I appreciate kind of seeing the other side of it. Now, my friend Sarah Stretton, who has also read the books and is a fan of the books and is watching the TV show, she thinks that the reason why they're doing it this way is because like Game of Thrones had multiple storylines going on at the same time. The books, they are very methodical in terms of how they expand the universe. The first book very closely follows Lyra. There's only like a couple of instances when we're not in direct pursuit or kind of oversight of Lyra. They've chosen with the TV show to do it differently. I actually don't mind it. I really don't. We did get an image of Will Parry, so now we kind of know who he is. I think it does reward perhaps the book readers more. I'm not sure. Like, I'd be very curious to know, like, if you haven't read the books and you're at this point, I'd be very curious to know, like, what it is that you're thinking as these things are happening. But, and a big deviation from this episode, like, from, as memory serves, if I'm wildly incorrect, let me know, but I don't think this is the case. They never at any point go to Mrs. Coulter's house to try to get the plans. And the fact that the TV show decided to do that, I thought was brilliant for a number of reasons, because not only does it kind of confirm their suspicions and whatever else in terms of the Gyptians and Lyra, but also it shows the strength of Mrs. Coulter to, they have that standoff, and she holds her own, and she tries to give an out to the boy, but it's in service of information that he's not willing to divulge, and so he makes the ultimate sacrifice of himself. That way he never has to reveal anything to his family. So I did truly appreciate that. As far as Lyra befriending the Gyptians, I like the deviation that it took a little bit while, because in the book it's a lot more instantaneous. And then I will say, like, as far like the alethiometer, her learning how to read it, I thought this was handled quite well. I really appreciate kind of how it's happening and how they're layering all this information. So overall, I don't know. I know not everyone that has read the books is happy with the TV show. They think, I will admit that they've changed up the characters quite a bit. There was someone who wrote me a comment on the YouTube channel about how, Ma Costa may have seemed a little bit weak. That may have been the case initially, but now I think she's a lot stronger, so I appreciate that. They also mentioned kind of a lot of the Gyptians were just recast in different ways, not like from the book, but so was Lord, to me, so was Lord Asriel and Lyra and Mrs. Coulter. And I don't know, I don't mind it. I think if anything, it took the spirit of the books, and it's fairly consistent with what it's doing as far as the TV show. So I'm actually on board with it. So far, so good. And maybe it's because I've been so burnt by the 2000s movie starring Daniel Craig and Nicole Kidman that, anything better than that movie is an open with welcome arms type of thing. But, I don't know. I do think objectively it is still a good TV show. And I'm excited to see, I know kind of where it's going. It's an 8-episode season. We're reaching the midpoint with the next episode. And we get the introduction of Yorick Burnison and Lee Scoresby, so I'm excited to see them. It's going to be fun before we get to Bullvanger and all those things. So I'm excited for the journey, I really am. But I'm curious to know your thoughts. How are you receiving the episodes? How do you like it? All that. Let me know. The point of this video is not for me to just spew my opinions of it, but to try to create a discussion, because I truly do love the books and I love the TV show, and so I want to converse with it. I want to converse about it on a deeper level. So do me that favor and go ahead and comment. Let's do it. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back next week with the discussion for episode 4. And if you are a content creator and want to learn various lessons on the creative journey, then please subscribe to my channel, because I have all that information out there for you and putting out more information every single day. Bye.